States resolution, the United States federal government should end all military aid to Egypt. Because of the word should in the resolution, we think this is policy around and should be weighed upon net benefits. We think that engaging in this type of education is going to be very good because learning about policies, sounding well informed about policies, like even in the foreign sphere, is very key to student activism and like spreading movements in the future. With that, let's start on the background. The first argument under the background is that United States military aid to Egypt has totaled over $40 billion since 1979. But secondly, we see that even 20% of Egypt's defense budget is entirely made up of United States military aid, indicating it's pretty significant in the status quo. But third of all, that the current denials of U.S. military aid to Egypt are temporary, small-scale, and even about to be ended right now, which means that whatever they read in the news is wrong. United States military aid to Egypt overall is still pretty stable. Fourth of all is that Egypt has actually been very complacent with the United States right now. They've actually been restricting a lot of United States officials' access to the Sinai region, and a lot of human rights groups that have been sent by the United States in Egypt were dismissed by the Egyptian government. Thus, our plan is going to be the resolution, which is just for the United States to end all military aid to Egypt. Do you have any questions? All right, the sovereignty. The first set, a couple of the things that we are sending to Egypt in terms of our military aid include cluster bombs, mine-resistant armored vehicles, which are used for arbitrary arrests, forced disappearances, and extrajudicial killings, indicating that all the military aid we're giving to Egypt right now is uniquely enabling them to undermine democracy and basically commit a lot of human rights violations. But secondly, we see that, that's basically it. Okay, now advantage one is Egypt. The uniqueness of what's happening in the status quo is that Egypt is committing a lot of human rights atrocities, and all of that is uniquely enabled by United States military aid. First of all, we see they're using United States given cluster bombs against various minority groups in the region right now, and they've actually specifically created a buffer zone where they're displacing a lot of people in that region, creating a lot of refugees. And secondly, is we see that Egypt is also uniquely undermining democracy by using United States military aid. They have vigorous crackdowns on freedom of speech, vigorous crackdowns on protests, and targeting a lot of marginalized groups specifically, and all that is uniquely enabled by United States military aid. However, the plan is obviously able to check back for all that abuse. First of all, I think there's a very clear signaling link here that this shows that the United States is not on board with what Egypt is doing and basically signals that Egypt should stop whatever they're doing. But secondly is technological capabilities. Basically, we remove the ability for Egypt to physically actually go out and do these types of human rights atrocities. They're uniquely enabled by United States arms. We furthermore see that they can't just turn to another actor. They can't just start funding these themselves, because we see that Egypt is very cash strapped in the status quo. I think so the reason why they're very cash-strapped right now is because the Suez Canal is basically their largest source of funding in the status quo, but all of that is about to be undermined by the discovery of the Northwestern Trade Passage. If you look on the map, basically, because the Arctic is melting, people are going to be taking that as a trade route over going through the Suez Canal, which is currently controlled by Egypt, indicating that Egypt's economy is not doing the best. A lot of investors are already fleeing from Egypt because they're predicting the fact that Egypt is going to be losing out on a lot of trade flow through the region. Why Egypt can't just turn to other actors? Why they can't just fund this themselves, why they can't ask another business for a military aid, means the United States is uniquely key in this instance. Thus, these impacts. The first impact is going to be that of terrorism. We see that Egypt is actually facing a lot of terror attacks as a result of their violent actions against minorities and are trying to undermine democracy. We would specifically outline the Wilayat Sinai's are a terrorist organization that have already committed a lot of attacks within Egypt right now. They've been specifically responsible for the Palm Sunday bombings, which killed 40 people in one strike. We think that this terrorism impact is going to be pretty huge because it's going to outweigh our probability. Specifically, having to live your life in fear of a terrorist attack is extremely dehumanizing, and forcing people being forced to go into terrorist organizations because of the abuse that the Egyptian government is doing is also very indicative of a very dehumanized situation within Egypt right now. But the second impact is going to be that of democracy, that I think having a stable democracy is going to be very key to checking back against oppression and checking back against human rights abuse. We think that's only when the people actually have a say in the government, is when the government can be held accountable for certain instances of human rights abuses. I think any study would indicate that a country without a stable democracy is going to have much worse human rights violations. Once again, that impacts up to dehumanization is a very proximal instance of violence that should be prioritized. We once again, if the United States signals this and we eliminate their ability to actually commit these human rights violations, I think we're going to be very ahead in how we're able to solve for democracy. Now, the second advantage is going to be that of Israel. Basically, If aid was delayed in the status quo, why has Egypt not suspended its human rights visas? Third argument under here is that the aid that we've suspended was temporary, very small scale, numbering in like the millions of dollars. Our aid overall is still in the billions of dollars. Trump actually, right before he suspended like $1 million aid package, he approved the $1.3 billion aid package. Means your suspension didn't do anything. That was already in the background. Now, advantage 2 is Israel. The uniqueness is that United States-Israeli relations are very, very low right now. First is we think that the United States arms posture that they've taken right now is uniquely the biggest concern of Israel right now. They've historically been concerned with other nations in the Middle East trying to attack Israel, indicating why like us giving military aid to Egypt is uniquely damaging to our relationship with Israel. Secondly, is I think Trump is a very big magnifying factor that he's been flip-flopping his stance on Israel a lot now, and his rhetoric basically his like rhetoric doesn't really signal anything to Israel. It means they're very unsure of the status quo. It means only a permanent ban of like military aid to Egypt is able to create a definitive stance for Israel to evaluate. But secondly, is on the uniqueness. We also see that Egypt-Israeli tensions are very, very high right now, which indicates why us ending our military aid to Egypt is going to be very good for Israel, for U.S.-Israel relations. First of all, we see that when Egypt used those cluster bombs to create like a buffer zone, it was specifically on the Gaza border, which basically borders Israel. Secondly, is that a lot of Egyptian political groups in the status quo have accused Israel of violating a lot of Palestinian rights, and furthermore, Israel thinks a lot of the terrorist organizations that are currently striking them right now are funded by Egypt. Indicates that these two countries do not have very good relations. Indicates why if the United States were to like end aid to one of them, it would be better off for the other one. Now, the links is the plan increases U.S.-Israeli relations, that we take a very definitive stance and align ourselves in terms of security with Israel. The impact is, I think that is, first of all, is an Israel first strike scenario. We see that Israel is only a world where Israel feels the United States is alienating them, is a world where Israel is more likely to be emboldened to like strike out for their own uses. We see that they've already begun to do this when they're like striking Iran. They only do this in a world where they feel like the United States is abandoning them, and it seems very clear that the United States is abandoning them in a world where we are literally supporting Israel's worst enemy of Egypt, indicating like we solve like Israel, like unchecked Israeli aggression, which supercharges like the terrorism and impact dehumanization.
Just before I start, thanks to everyone for organizing this tournament and judging and participating for the experience. The winners can be 3 off and the advantage sport. 3 off. Is anybody not good? First off is the theory hedge. Affirming is easier than negating. Ace of points perception. The occupancy first and last speech, which means that they control the internally to judge psychological bias in order to vote for them. This outweighs other forms of structural skew and reversibility. Since it's possible to just get faster compensate for time skew, but it's not possible to correct for psychological bias. The east point is ground. The occupancy ought to be parameterized as resolution to a specific subset of the top option. They think like Kornig, deceptive counterplay. This 3 implications. 1 is that you should impact turn affirmative fairness arguments. That it just corrects your side bias status quo. 1 second. 2, you should allow them to split the block to make the 1 AR more difficult. 3, you should pursue neg because we need a harder job. Yeah.
How many topical apps are there on this topic?
Oh, like lots. You can defend like specific kinds of aid you're restricting, right? There are a lot of like topical apps you can read. I think you could be creative. Like, it's not my fault you weren't creative. Just like left for next on these. The sufficient negative burden is to prove that the resolution is false. Premise 1 is that n grains of sand defines a heap of sand, and premise 2 that is subtracting 1 grain of sand does not make the heap no longer a heap. In other words, n minus 1 grain of sand is still a heap. But the problem is that repeated application of premise 2 to premise 1 means that even 1 grain of sand is still a heap, which means that the predicates in any resolution are fundamentally vague to begin with. There's no distinction between the existence or non-existence of a grain of sand. Supply this negates. First of all, it means that aid does not exist. If you decrease it by $1, we still say there exists military to Egypt, but if we keep decreased by $1, it gives $1. We probably say that aid does not exist. Second, the USFG does not exist. We remove 1 senator. If we remove 1 senator, no people probably mean USFG. So just it means the predicate is vague. We say can't remove senators. There be no more USFG. Yeah.
Is 1 billion the same as 0?
I would. Yeah, probably. The disadvantage is Saudi Arabia relations. Uniqueness 1, Prince Salman, who's basically the younger brother in the family, was recently chosen after his father abdicated. This was chosen as the elder brother and was super politically unpopular. There's a ton of internal political tension in Saudi Arabia right now. Second, the argument that this is barely stable. There's a ton of anti-U.S. sentiment. His older brother Neeraj, who was passed over, is super anti-U.S., but Prince Salman is very pro-U.S. There's a lot of tension here, but it's just barely holding any status quo. He links, first of all, the affirmative plan is the reneging on the Camp David agreement. The Camp David agreement was signed decades ago, and basically ensures that the U.S. is going to keep giving military aid to both Israel and Egypt. The problem is that Saudi Arabia will view this as a betrayal of Egypt and a betrayal of a key ally and remaking the agreement. Second, also their Israel relations argument definitely proves that this is true because Saudi Arabia just sees the U.S. getting closer to Israel, backing away from Egypt. Third, Saudi Arabia will also be questioning U.S. military guarantees to Saudi Arabia, including the effectiveness of the U.S. military, U.S. nuclear deterrence, which is a huge security guarantee for Saudi Arabia. It's the reason why Saudi Arabia is not proliferating and trying to get nuclear weapons against the U.S. on their side. The AF will make them question that. Fourth, there's increased Sinai terrorism as a result of Egypt, because now that if Egypt does not get military aid, that means that terrorism will spiral out of control because they cannot control it. Increased Sinai terrorism is really problematic for Saudi Arabia because Sinai is very close to them. It's just a short distance across water to get Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia uses as a security threat on its borders and would wants Egypt to be in control of impacts. 1. Nuclear arms race. Saudi Arabia has an outstanding deal with Pakistan, where Pakistan agrees to basically sell them a nuke anytime Saudi Arabia wants it. The only reason Saudi Arabia is not purchasing a nuke yet is because they have U.S. security guarantee. Without the U.S. security guarantee, Saudi Arabia will just purchase a bunch of nukes from Pakistan. This also triggers Iran to proliferate because Iran thinks that Saudi Arabia will launch a first strike against it. This proliferation triggers war because it means that Saudi Arabia also does have real incentive to launch a first strike once Iran actually begins developing weapons. Also, the existence of rogue generals and untrained generals and the lack of security systems probably means that there is a lot of potential for miscalculation or an individual person in the military to launch a strike. Second impact is Saudi Arabian instability. Now, is a drug user, and there have been a ton of assassination attempts on him. Basically, if political tension pushes anti-U.S. sentiment over the brink in Saudi Arabia, this means that Salam will be ousted, Nueva will be put in power. This basically means that the Saudi Arabian political situation will get a lot more complicated. There will probably be a breakdown leading to a factual war between the pro-U.S. and anti-U.S. sides, which would be disastrous for Saudi Arabia. Third, impact is oil shocks that Saudi Arabia views as the fundamental betrayal of its allies and the fundamental betrayal of U.S. Arab relations. This means that Saudi Arabia will probably launch an embargo, and CS is empirically confirmed by the oil embargo in the 1970s, where Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states basically felt that the U.S. was way too pro-Israel, which meant that they basically launched an oil embargo against the U.S. in order to try to convince them to stop supporting Israel, which was disastrous for the U.S. economy. Also, Saudi Arabia has now grown to the second largest supplier of U.S. oil, and oil shocks cause econ collapse because you need oil to basically do anything in order to run cars, in order for the economy to function. This is a structural balance impact, and the fact that it leads to poverty and poverty and crime is resulting in economic decline. And it also needs to increase militarism because the U.S. government is going to need to look for alternative sources of oil. We'll go for wars in other countries or buy zero alternative sources of oil. Also, Saudi Arabia is probably able to take a lot of Gulf states sort of follow along with them because they're really good allies. So controls a massive internal link into U.S. oil supply. Next on case. The biggest argument here is that Egypt already has a lot of arms. Just things like cluster bombs might be worn out, but the fact that Egypt can build more cluster bombs, not particularly sophisticated technologies that are being supplied by the U.S. Second, U.S. not supplying cluster bombs, really crude weapons in the first place. Third, a lot of the weapons the U.S. is supplying are things like tanks and guns, which don't wear out over time. The Egyptian military is probably already really strong. Fourth, the fact is that even after the suspension of aid, which is any permanent, which has been a suspension of all aid, even though it's temporary and will go back, the suspension of all aid, like if they were right that this were going to trigger impacts, we should have already seen an increase in terrorism, which is a double bind. Either A, the scenarios that the affirmative is going for have already been triggered, or B, or B, it's not going to happen as a result of U.S. decreased military aid. Oh yeah, there's some stable democracy stuff. First of all, they say this is going to push Egypt into democracy. We'll go for an impact on starting to but the argument is transition wars. Currently, there's an authoritarian government in Egypt. Well, this is not a good thing. It's probably a lot better than transition war, which leads to a lot of factionalism, infighting. The Arab Spring is probably empirical confirmation of this, where a lot of pushes for democracy probably led to a lot more warfare and violence. The second argument is Mansfield and Snyder, who did two academic students' massive statistical analysis, found that governments during the state transition from autocracy to democracy are much more unstable than autocracies. Also, the fact that the transition is likely to be really violent probably prevents democracy from actually materializing. Because if there's a lot of political violence, it's probably going to prevent a democratic institution to actually develop, which means they never actually get to see the terminal impact of the event.
It also inevitably regress back to autocracy.
Yeah, it also inevitably regress back to autocracy, which means no solvency for the first advantage, second advantage.
Because more seems democratic election.
Yeah, because more seems like democratic elected. Obviously. Next on Israel. First, they say Israelis should have no, we're just going to non-unique advantage. Also, the problem here is that the link story literally proves that the said is true. We're just going to go for non-uniques here and concede the link story. Great. First, Trump is super anti-Palestine right now. He said he wants to move the capital from the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is the capital, which is a super anti-Palestinian move. He used to recognize Israel as Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which really upsets Palestinian groups. Second, he's like super pro-Israel. A lot of his major donors are from Israel. He's like he also like a lot of really right-wing establishment politicians support Israel. So a lot of his allies are much more pro-Israel than they are pro-Palestine. Third, he's ideologically probably a lot closer to Netanyahu in the fact that they're both pretty right-wing. Also pretty like anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant. Who's also like sentiments that are definitely very prevalent in the Israeli cabinet. For example, Avigdor Lieberman, who literally wants to bomb everyone in Palestine, probably means that there's a lot more ideological similarity between Trump and Netanyahu than before. Also, Netanyahu really hated Obama because Obama was very liberal and wanted to actually look for a two-state solution, where Trump is really not in favor of that, which probably means Obama's unpopularity with Israel probably means that ideological closeness between leaders probably is a really significant determinant in relations. Also, on the relations there, great, the U.S. gets closer to Israel, but we've already shown that relations are not a problem now. If the U.S. gets closer to Israel, that only risks triggering the Saudi Arabia NDAs. The fact is that this link story literally proves that our disadvantage is true.
The order's going to be app, then the neg. But on the neg, put the disad on top. Very good. Okay. On the inherency extended across the fact that Egypt is currently getting a massive amount of aid. We, in fact, actually just recently approved $1 billion aid package in case that they're receiving a massive amount of aid in cluster bombs, planes, tanks, and another bunch of armored vehicles that they've conceded to implicate Egypt in a bunch of disappearances, forced extrajudicial killings. These are all conceded analysis. This is all conceded analysis now. The weapons aid that we are currently giving them is fueling that. In addition, conceded analysis as to how we are currently giving them a majority of their military budget. I think this is going to be very crucial in the solvency of the plan, because when they are conceding that the most of their military budget is coming from the United States, and all of a sudden we are saying no, you cannot do this. There's also a perceptual link, signaling link that the Egyptian government is now saying no, we cannot be doing these things because it's seen as the U.S. taking a stand, saying you are not able to pretty much arrest anyone that's against your own government. You are not able to keep posturing against Egypt and be bombing the Gaza Strip. These are all signaling arguments that go conceded, means that we get access to a lot of the solvency arguments. The answer that they already have a lot of cluster bombs and they already have a lot of bombs is simply not going to be responsive enough, considering the fact that we're still sending them a bunch of the necessities like the bombs and the planes and the tanks that they need to escalate against Israel on the Gaza Strip and other areas of Israel. But in addition, we can also see that these things are not going to be easily able to be just created by the Egyptian government. Otherwise, they would have said no and just been creating it internally on their own already. Indicates that they need the U.S. for all the things that they're using for the human rights abuses anyways. Their answers on solvency are just not enough on the first advantage. On the first advantage, extend across how currently they are being enabled by weapons, and you can cross-apply the solvency argument as to how we are currently giving the majority of their military budget. This is an indication as to how when we just pretty much stop sending a huge portion of their aid, they stop getting a massive amount of their military budget. They are not able to do these things anymore. They are specifically not able to use these cluster bombs, which the analysis goes to see as to how they cannot create it in their own country. They are not able to do these extrajudicial killings anymore. But the only piece of link analysis they have on this is that there's somehow going to be a transition war. But the status quo is the transition war. We can see that Israel is already having a transition war where they are subjugating all their individuals and they are causing pretty much terrorism to rise already. This is conceded analysis. Once again, the status quo is that terrorism is rising because Israel is using all the U.S. military to put down their citizens. Is going to be really bad. Oh, sorry, Egypt. My bad. Like, did I say Israel? Probably Egypt. A lot of the Egypt is already using a bunch of their military aid to pretty much put down a lot of their citizens and create the terrorism, create the transition war between the terrorist ideology and the Egyptian government. Means that the affirmative is the only way to actually solve for this. But on the argument about how this is always going to go back to authoritarianism, anyways, I think that it's always going to be better to try and plan than ultimately trying to go for no argument, go for no hope at all. But in addition, we would say that they are also able to have movements in the future when they decrease the amount of the military. Because we can see that social movements, grassroots movements, such as a lot of the the Arab Spring related movements are able to increase democracy within the Middle East. We can just enable this, but currently it's being suppressed in the status quo because of USA. Gives us access to all the impacts and probably folds all across on the Israel advantage. Massive mistake here when they're going for only non-uniques. Extend across all the links. I'm going to answer these. They're non-unique right now with a bunch of reasons why Israel really hates the U.S. right now. First of all, you can extend across how the U.S. is currently literally funding the people that are bombing the Israel border. Probably an indication as to how it doesn't matter if they move their capital to Jerusalem. The fact that the U.S. is still funding people that is bombing their border is an indication that Netanyahu would always hate this war. But in addition, Netanyahu has specifically come out himself. The Prime Minister of Israel has said that the U.S. President, Donald Trump, is pretty much the most anti-Israel president in a while, specifically because to just trust Netanyahu's word. He does not like Donald Trump right now. But in addition, this is specifically because Trump is going back on the single state, two-state, one-state solution. He doesn't know what he wants. Specifically, he's even gone back to the two-state solution. This is why Israel hates Trump so much. Zero relations between the Israeli government and the United States right now. Only we're able to solve for this because we stop the people that are literally throwing missiles at them. Okay, that's the only non-unique they go for. That's horrible. That's massive offense for us. Specifically extend across the Israel first strike right now. This is inevitable in the status quo at the point in which they are escalating right now, and they are always going to try and defend themselves. I think this is massive offense that is able to frame a lot of their offense coming off on the disadvantage. On the disadvantage, first of all, you can cross-apply how Israel first strike is always going to, this is conceit analysis on the second advantage, this is always going to indicate that Saudi Arabia escalation is inevitable in the status quo. Only the U.S. has a risk of solving for this. It means that we control the internal link to your entire Saudi Arabia politics disadvantage. But in addition, the overview to the entire uniqueness argument is that the overview to the entire advantage link story is that you probably shouldn't be buying the Saudi Arabia politics as to how people would currently take power. Saudi Arabia is currently too unpredictable to actually be predicting what would happen in the future. Specifically, we will isolate pretty much gender equality bills within Saudi Arabia that is causing a massive amount of backlash within the people in power right now. These bills are being talked about and being passed in the status quo or being rejected in the status quo always means that there are other alternative causes as to what would cause a massive political backlash or massive political movement within Saudi Arabia. Your advantage is completely non-unique. Do not go for this. Be very skeptical on this. In addition, we can see that on the scenario about U.S. Saudi Arabia backlash and how Saudi Arabia will go back on Israel. We can see that this is absolutely not possible. Saudi Arabia and U.S. tensions are way too high. First of all, they are not going to be going back on this specifically because the U.S. just approved a multi-billion-dollar arms deal sale to Saudi Arabia. I don't think they would go back on this. And in addition, this response is able to be cross-applied to the argument that they're linked about how they will see this as a violation of Camp David Accords. I do not think they're going to see this as a violation of Camp David Accords, especially at the point in which we literally are sending billions of dollars of new weapons to them right now within the past few months. It means they will not be freaking out that the U.S. is going back on the word. But in the third argument is that the U.S. currently buying a massive amount of oil from Saudi Arabia. It means that, again, they wouldn't risk getting rid of these ties. And in addition, Saudi Arabia relations are high being in the status quo because of Trump and all of his commercial businesses there. It means that they would never go back on this, yeah?
The temporary small-scale cuts to Egyptian military, however, are a violation.
Yeah, however, the temporary cuts of small-scale military to Egypt are bad. Actually, that reminds me, there's a double bind argument I need to answer on the AF case. On the double bind argument on the affirmative case, you should probably evaluate this as to how it thumps the advantage more or the disadvantage more specifically, because they would have already viewed this as a violation of Camp David Accords. Specifically, the Israeli first strike scenario operates completely independently of this, and the human rights thing operates completely independently of this because originally we're just stopping millions, but now we're stopping all 8 billions. I think the double bind doesn't make sense. On to the theory arguments. Your theory argument is completely uncontextualized to this route. Specifically, we only have one top to laugh. I think William was mouthing the word all military aid in Adam's speech, indication that you probably shouldn't be presuming neg. But in addition, you should probably be presuming AF as an indication because there isn't a mass amount of neg flicks that I think can explode in the neg blocks 4 to 5 times. It means that if there's no offense at the end of the round, it means that we've been more effective in negating and pretty much neutralizing all the arguments because they fundamentally have a broader range of arguments to go for. It means that we are the better debaters. There's no offense left at the end of the round. Do not buy their analysis as how you should allow them to split the block. This ultimately makes the 12 to 5 times you always infinitely worse because now the app has to pretty much answer 2 different positions that might even be contradictory. And there's no psychological bias. They do not do enough analysis on the psychological bias argument for you to be buying this presumption argument onto grains of sand. What? Okay. On truth testing, do not buy the truth testing paradigm. This is defense at best as to why the affirmative is not going to be a good idea. But if we're extending analysis specifically as to why the affirmative is a good idea, this is going to be, you're going to be voting affirmative on the risk of Boston. But the second argument is going to be an independent reason to vote against them, to independent reason to drop them a priori because their conception of truth testing completely ignores the framework that my partner tells you that the truth testing paradigm ultimately allows for stagnation. But extend across the analysis on the framework at the very first few seconds of my partner's speech as to how you need to be engaging in fiat. Otherwise, you ultimately allow yourself to be caught in this cycle of like oppression because you're never able to evaluate yourself in place of how to liberate yourself. But in addition, they literally say 1 billion is the same as 0. This justifies Holocaust, and now another independent reason to drop them because they can say that, oh, there were 100 million people killed, but oh, actually, we just we can throw away all these people. There were 0 people killed in the Holocaust. Probably should not be allowing this at all. Independent reason, drop them right there. Then do not let them go for this. Holocaust denial. I think it's pretty clear that 100 million people killed versus 0 people killed in the Holocaust is different. Finally, no truth testing paradigms are bad because it ultimately involves an infinite number of burdens on the affirmative. Like, we have too many things to prove anyways. They don't specify.
Okay. Order of paradoxical truth testing, Saudi relations after review.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so theory interview, heaps of sand, DA, case in order. So you're not ready? It's the fact that this is not contextualized around, you shouldn't be buying it, but then when they say presume after, you should be presuming that because you need to prefer the status quo over change because status quo is stable, at least in status quo we read unique evidence on that, which means probably preferable over any change in the next argument. Yeah, that's like the only option that we go here. Perception. Yeah, like I mean, like there's perception arguments that we made that primacy recency. Everyone is influenced by that, and everyone is subject to it. When you hear an argument first and then you hear it again last, that influences you more than anything else, even if you're a flow judge, because the order in which you read arguments and the things and the way in which you consider them, like definitely like that works. So like it like colors the way that you're viewing everything around. Second argument on the heap of sand, this is just a purely semantic argument. It doesn't make any implications regarding the actual like quantification of people or individuals or anything like that. Which means the argument that they're making about how the Holocaust is not, how this like leads to the Holocaust now because you're able to just infinitely regressively, that is the argument here. The argument here is that semantics literally don't make sense. That means that there is no way that you are able to understand how like what the usfg even means or what A even means. Additionally, there's no framework to evaluate this argument under, especially when they read net benefits as like the weighing argument. There's no offense on this that you're able to resolve under net benefits framework.
So under a truth testing paradigm, and I say in the Holocaust, 300 million people killed.
Yeah, so
does that equal 0 people killed?
There's no truth testing paradigm because we conceded that benefits in the first speech, which is not the same thing as truth testing, which means there's no way you can evaluate that type of argument. On-Saudi relations. The first argument on reneging Camp David, where you say no, it literally violates Camp David Accord because the United States is obligated to continue military aid to Israel under the Camp David Accord. That is like literally the way that we are betraying Egypt to the state. We can extend the fact that Egypt is the key ally in the region because they check back in a lot of areas like they work bilaterally with the United States, terrorism, they work back bilaterally with the United States, like things like oil and trade, which is really important because the United States reneging on the Camp David Accord is seen as perceptual and spills over to the rest of like the Arab nations like Saudi Arabia, which is really important because Camp David is the main thing that is tying between the West and the West and the East right now. The second argument that you can extend is their exact argument that Saudi Arabia is too unpredictable because Saudi Arabia is internally unstable. That is our own unique evidence that they basically just conceive about saying that Saudi Arabia is unpredictable.
Make a vague cause.
Yeah, like they make a really vague alternative cause argument with like this like bill regarding gender or whatever, but that's not really responsive to the fact that there's like literally assassination attempts on leaders within Saudi Arabia, and the fact that they skipped over generationally when King Salman skipped over Prince Nayef when he was appointing Prince Salman as president, which is problematic because that goes against the like historical trend of Saudi Arabia, which is probably more important in terms of like the cultural way things work over there. Additionally, they said the United States approved multi-billion-dollar trade deals with Saudi Arabia, but that doesn't matter because because they are more concerned about what most recently happened. They say themselves that Trump flip-flops back and forth, and if the United States then cutting back on Israel or on Egyptian aid, then they are wondering like, why did they cut back on our aid? Like we're very unprepared. This thing causes them to proliferate because they cannot trust the United States because the United States clearly displayed that they are not willing to commit to any act, which means the only way that Saudi Arabia is able to securitize is if they get their own nuclear weapons. That means that because they're not like there's no guarantee anymore that they are subject to the nuclear umbrella because A, they've reneged on the Camp David Accord, which is the only thing that's tying the East to the West. It's a conceded argument, and B, that they are no longer reliably under the nuclear umbrella. A nuclear war is really important for Saudi Arabia. They want to exist, and any risk of nuclear war, they're willing to go to the lengths to. And you can extend the fact that they have an existing trade deal with Pakistan, where they're able to buy nuclear weapons whenever they want. That means that there's a risk of nuclear war because they feel victimized by the United States, then pulling out of the Egyptian deal. Even if that's for a short period of time, the fact that the United States is using that as a coercive method in order to do things leaves Saudi Arabia unprepared. And Saudi Arabia doesn't like feeling unprepared. They would rather take things into their own hands and make sure that they are secure themselves. They say that Trump relations are high in status quo, but we would say that they're really not high in, we say that that's really irrelevant to the security dilemma that Saudi Arabia is facing. It doesn't matter if they trust Trump because Trump's actions speak louder than Trump's words. And since it's not this time. Yeah, this basically controls internally to the advantage because it's a Saudi Arabia proliferation that then goes regional. This is you can extend the impacts that we say that this leads to an arms race, which then can lead to war because of first strikes, because of first strike capability in order to prevent their own first strike. Additionally, you can extend Saudi Arabian instability that this then leads to a politics scenario, which then causes Saudi Arabia to then head President Ayaf, who's a drug addict, and has been assassinated, and has a bunch of other problems regarding him, which then destroys the Saudi Arabian political structure and leads to a bunch of factional infighting. Additionally, you can extend the entirety of oil shocks, which is a really important advantage because if Saudi Arabia feels even slightly threatened in the same way that the United States is pulling out of aid, then that Saudi Arabia can feel like they feel validated in also pulling out their that means that Saudi Arabia feels validated also responding with economic abilities, which means that there probably is an external link into oil shocks independent of their responsiveness, which is probably supercharged from the fact that which is super bad. Because if the United States keeps on giving Egypt aid, then pulling Egyptian aid away, then giving them aid, and then Saudi Arabia responds with that similarly on oil, that then creates fluctuation in the price of oil, which then destroys the United States economy. On case. The main argument you're citing over here is that the physical aid that the United States is giving is not sophisticated. They're giving things like tanks and they're giving things like guns. But the aid that they're giving is things like tanks and things like guns, but then they're giving money in addition, which is producing non-sophisticated weapons like military technology. Essentially, you can extend the fact that the United States is only giving 20% of Israeli of Egyptian aid, which means that the United States is able to, which means that Egypt then is able to just counterbalance by then shifting their priorities around in order to make sure that they're still producing, which means you have no solvency on this issue because if Egypt really wants to produce cluster bombs, they still will. They'll shift their funds around because they're not sophisticated weapons. Yeah, that's additionally you say that the suspension of aid bumps the disadvantage, but this is an argument about the status quo that either that the removal of aid will cause terrorism in the status quo, which we're not seeing, or it leads what's the argument? Okay, whatever. Don't care about that one. On transition wars, they say that transition wars, it's always better to try, but if you can see that transition wars are inevitable with the empiric that we read about Mohammed Morsi in 2013, who's a democratically elected leader who then got couped the next year, that probably is a preferable one because of proximal nature and because of relevance to the round that we're specifically reading, which means that there was a regression inevitably back to authoritarian dictatorships. Additionally, you can extend the Mansfield-Snyder evidence that Adam Beecher says that autocratic leads to democratic, but it's a very unstable way because there's a lot of different parties that are fighting in order to get control, which is problematic because when you have multiple parties that are fighting to get control without one that is clearly better than another, you get a situation like Syria where no party is able to get a significant advantage over the other in order to win the war, which leads to unending infinite war. They say that the status quo is transition wars, but the issue that you have here is that there aren't parties that are competing back and forth in order for control of the government. There's a stable regime that exists right now, but the affirmative he's playing throws that into chaos.
Except that I use on second advantage.
Yeah, on the second advantage. You can extend the fact that the United States is trying to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is really important because this comes from claims of historical importance. This is important for the people of Israel, which is important to Netanyahu more than anything else because he's the democratically elected leader, part of the parliament, which means that he is really important for him to make sure that he is appealing to the people. That is a huge move. That is representative of that is probably more influential in the way that Netanyahu thinks. Additionally, you can extend the fact that they say that he's flip-flopping back and forth with his worst, but that's better than Obama. You can extend the E point that we read, where Netanyahu hated Obama because he was hard on I want a two-state solution. But that's probably better for Trump if he's going back and forth on that, because going back and forth on that means he's able to compromise. He can't be persuaded to be believing a one-state solution, which probably means that he's better for Israel. Additionally, you can extend the fact that he's ideologically right, which is aligned with Donald Trump. You say that he just never power, like he's get funds by people, but that's like really unimportant when you look at what actually motivates Netanyahu. He wants to stay in power, and he wants to have a one-state solution. When you look at things that Trump prioritizes, those are what Trump is prioritizing right now. So in terms of like what we're, yeah, like in terms of what's important, it's different.
There will be two overviews that you should follow, and the disadvantage, and the advantages. Okay. Pretty good? Overview 1. Don't allow any new one-air weighing in your responses. They're really behind the flow. We're connected with a lot of really cheating, new, squirrely arguments. Here's the reason why you should also do a very high standard of any of these arguments and deny any one-air weighing. Ace point is verifiability. We get no 1 hour and don't have any ability to respond to these weighing arguments. If you let them access these weighing arguments, I mean, they were able to blow up any marginal amount of views. How weighing arguments real walk through.
I think any presumption and weighing arguments that you have against structural like flaw.
No. Any argument about the PMR can't weigh is a new argument, it's a new theory interpretation that just should have come out
It's not a
earlier.
theory interpretation. It's a meta weighing argument. I think I get meta weighing arguments because you responses. It's just a weighing
It
argument.
talks about how you can weigh, and it's saying you can't. Like,
Yeah, so you
weighing
can't
argument.
weigh.
Wait, this isn't an extra debate. It's a panel.
Yeah, great. The appropriate goals in this kind of debate, piece one, verifiability. Since we don't get the opportunity to respond to these arguments non-verifiable, we should not vote on non-verifiable arguments because the possibility of a logically debate. Next, second overview. There are a lot of impacts in this baby. Here's why we're ahead of them. The first, most important impact is the disadvantage, and there are also then there's also the these stability impacts on the first advantage and the Israel relations impact. Here's why we're ahead on here's why we're ahead on the second relations impact. First of all, is that based on strength of links, and they've conceded the entire internal link chain. It's just a question of whether or not Saudi Arabia feels pushed away from the U.S. In contrast, the internal link debate on the other two on the first advantage is much messier. So you should probably just vote here because it's easier. These points of magnitude. The fact is that this impact is formalized in nuclear war with which will lead to a massive amount of death, whereas the only impact in the affirmative is probably just like human rights abuses. The fact is that like this outweighs the magnitude. This kills like a lot more people, leads to a lot more death, which probably means it's like a lot more significant than the human rights advantage on the first advantage. The second argument, the second, then on the case advantage. First of all, on the transition wars, they're really far behind here. They give no warrants as to why they think that they will be able to successfully push Egypt over the brink into democracy. We give a bunch of empirical examples of this not going to happen. First one is the Arab Spring, about how the emergence of a lot of revolutions in a lot of different countries probably just led to more political violence, more political crackdowns, probably made things worse. They've also conceded that in the status quo, the authoritarian government is really stable. It's like a lot better because human abuses are limited kept at a certain level. If they lose military power and they're basically pushed further back, that means that there will be groups that rise up against the government and lead to conflict and war. Also, there will be empirical evidence from Mansfield and Saudi, which is never responded to. They just say statistical analysis, probably based on sample size, because it looks at a lot of different countries and find that in the same transition, countries that are most unstable, probably better to leave than authoritarian countries. It's an impact turn to the first advantage, which means they're probably really far behind in this debate. Next on the second advantage. Yeah. Also, extended Muhammad Morsi empirically proves because he was a democratic leader that was ousted, and that led to a lot of political violence, more violence in countries status quo, which probably means that if we like weaken the Egyptian government, human rights abuse are just going to be a lot worse. Next on the second.
Probably outweighs terrorism.
Yeah. Probably also outweighs and controls income terrorism, and also prevents democracy being successful. Because there's no democracy, it's total war. On second advantage. There are probably a lot of non-needs here that they're not answering. First of all, the fact that Trump is actually very pro-Israel, is very anti-Palestine. Even if Israel thinks that Trump is unpredictable, they're still like a lot more pro-Trump than they were pro-Obama. Secondly, isolated by ideological closeness is probably a really important factor because relations were a lot worse under Obama than they are now. The fact that Trump is very right-wing, very anti-Palestinian, probably is a reason why a lot of right-wing leaders probably have a lot more in common with him. Also, they have no empirical evidence on why Israel is actually going to go to war with Egypt, right? Like, why is Israel watching a war? So next, they try to go with this really weak advantage two turns he disad argument. But the problem here is that this completely misunderstands the link story of the DA. The link story is that U.S. involvement with Israel and U.S. closeness to Israel is what caused Saudi Arabia to become annoyed over Turkey. They're saying that if Israel attacks Egypt, that would be a problem. That's not a U.S. action, which means that the link turn or the advantage controls internal case argument makes zero sense. Okay, great. Next, next on the disad. They try to go for a bunch of arguments that they're multi-billion-dollar aid packages, but the problem is that like the U.S. is still very close to Saudi Arabia, still like pretty close to Saudi Arabia status quo, right? There's a lot of like just like a lot of political like tension in Saudi Arabia. It's a question of whether or not they make it uniquely worse by annoying Saudi Arabian leaders and increasing strength for troop movements against Salman. There's a ton of tension. There's only a risk that the app makes it worse. There's no way in which they can possibly argue that like U.S. betraying its key allies and annoying Saudi Arabia will probably make the situation better. It's something to get worse. Always.
The first one should be an overview, truth testing, advantage 2, background, like the top of the affirmative case, then disadvantage, and then
Sorry, what argument?
advantage 1. What's
Well,
first?
Wait, so, yeah, can you repeat the order?
Okay, so overview, truth testing, advantage 2, top of case, disad, advantage 1. Is everybody ready?
Sorry, overview truth testing, just add top case.
You all ready? Remember that this debate is about net benefits. Furthermore, the PMR is allowed to weigh. It's in the Parli rules, which outweighs because it's the only thing that we have going into this round. If you read any Parli handbook, the PMR is allowed to make weighing arguments. Rebuttals are allowed to make weighing arguments. Furthermore, drop them from reading this argument, the LOR. They should have specified whether the PMR can weigh or not in the LOC. This is key to our MG strategy.
This argument that we should lose for reading a theory argument is new.
It's a meta weighing argument. LOR, which means the PMR can golden turn it. Okay, resuming time. It's key to our MG strategy because Ryan doesn't know whether he can make weighing arguments or not in the MG. If we knew that PMR couldn't weigh, then Ryan would have just weighed it. Now, Neeraj says, okay, on case like kind of overview. Neeraj says this. Trump's actions speak louder than his words. That means it's game over for the negative here because his actions right now are telling Israel that we are supporting terrorists and we are supporting a country that is literally bombing Israel's border right now. That is going to be very bad for U.S.-Israeli relations. But now let's go to truth testing really quickly. This is the first layer, very easy to vote at because they just haven't kicked out of it well enough. Even under net benefits, you should not be denying the Holocaust. That's going to be very bad for our policy making education. Means you should drop them there. Now go to advantage 2. Let's start on the uniqueness. We're going to be winning that U.S.-Israeli relations are very low right now. First, the armed posturing is going to be the first thing that determines U.S.-Israeli relations before everything else. Because I specifically tell you that Israel cares about their security above else. That's their first concern because they're always saying that, oh, Middle Eastern countries are going to be attacking Israel, the only Jewish state in the entire existence of the world. In any case, security should always come first. But secondly, that Trump's actions are currently indicting Israel, are currently indicting relations right now. I think it's very clear when we are literally supporting a country that Israel believes is a terrorist organization. I think that's going to be very devastating for U.S.-Israeli relations. You don't even have to believe me or my opponents. You can believe Netanyahu, who straight up came out and said Trump is literally the worst president for Israel. That comes before their ideology arguments because conservatives can still hate each other, believe it or not. Now, go to the links level. I think the links are pretty intuitive here. Trump's actions are saying that we do not support you, Israel. We are supporting an enemy of Israel, which is really detrimental to relations and is causing Israel to first strike. That is the impact. First strike independently turns their disadvantage. Even if you thought the negative was a good idea, you thought wrong because the impact on the second advantage still turns the disadvantage because when Israel first strikes countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia, that's what causes Saudi Arabia to freak out and prolife and cause oil shocks or whatever. This is empirically proven. That was literally extended by Ryan. We tell you that Israel lash out's already happening now when they're saying that hey, Iran is really evil. We need to start attacking Iran. And they've actually done that before. Don't believe me? Search it up, which means first strike happening now. Only the plan solves that by getting rid of one of Israel's, by having the United States not support one of Israel's enemies. They literally all they went for was non-uniques in the LOC to this advantage. Do not expect them to be winning it, especially when it turns the disadvantage. Now go to the top of case really quickly. I want to make a clarification on how aid works. I think there's 2 different levels here. First is the perceptual level. That when we temporarily end our $1 million of aid, that is what thumps the disadvantage. That is what reneges on the Camp David Accord deals. That's what I told Ryan to say. But secondly, on the question of magnitude, I think that we're ahead on this. That even though they temporarily cut this aid, overall, it's still bad for U.S.-Israeli relations because it's still numbering in the billions of dollars. Okay, now go to the dissent. I think a very clear overview on the dissent is there's no uniqueness and no link, which makes this irresolvable. We just thump the disadvantage, which means even if their interlinks are really, really cool, it doesn't matter because they never get to those interlinks in the first place. It's very easy for debaters to be like, oh, we have really cool interlinks, but it's very hard to like actually debate the links because it's like different topics, like the 20-minute prep. Now, go to the dissent very specifically. You can like they extended this for us. Saudi Arabia is very unpredictable in the status quo. That is an argument for the affirmation because it means there's no reason why we link. We've already thumped this with gender equality bills, which we've already explained. Because like if there's already gender equality bills, that means there's already a sufficient reason for backlash to happen in the status quo. Means all their impacts would have already triggered with like the political instability. Also is a reason why like the F just straight up does like is impossible to link. Now you can extend that we've already thumped the Camp David Accord, which is where they get most of their internal links from because we already reneged on the Camp David Accord. That was conceded out of the net block. Basically means that like Saudi Arabia would have already been scared of the United States' like security guarantees because like we already like violated the treaty that they say is so important. Furthermore, there's another no link argument that I want to extend here. I said Trump's actions do speak louder than his words, but what speaks even louder than that is his money. You can extend across the fact that Trump has billions of dollars invested in Saudi Arabia. There's a reason why Saudi Arabia will always be confident. No reason why their interlinks will ever be triggered. Furthermore, on the impact level, we have independently turned their case. All they talk about is how like Saudi Arabia will get very, very scared, causing instability and like oil shocks. Those only happen in a world where Israel's first striking Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia. That is what caused them to be even more scared. Now, go to advantage one really, really quickly. Transition wars are inevitable. Status quo is transition wars. Our first impact scenario of terrorism is the reason why transition wars are already happening. Means there's no unique office for an impactor here. Like when terrorists are attacking Egypt, the reason why they're doing that is because they're democratic. Yeah.
The argument that terrorism is generating uniqueness and causing the transition wars is new in PMR.
That's
Transition was
articulated-
inevitable is new. Never
Yeah.
new.
Those are articulated. They're also articulated.
Most of my MG is literally transition wars now. They're killing, like, they're doing their citizens and they're like terrorists that are attacking.
Because
That's
terrorists
entirely
are
the MG on this
Like MG was status quo is transition wars. I'm just saying that in a cooler way. Okay. So yeah, status quo is transition wars. That means there's no unique impact to this. People are already fighting over democracy and autocracy means there's no impact now. Vote out.